Hello once again, and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting live from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues, as regular viewers know. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com. A new show is posted every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. New shows also appear on YouTube and numerous other media. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners only Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area. It's about 18 stations now throughout Nevada. Questions or comments, you can send an email to bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder, 702-257-1060. If you leave contact information, we'll respond by email, text, or telephone. Questions directed to our guests will be forwarded to them. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by any mainstream media. So we always present a few for our listeners' education. Some are good shootings, some are questionable, sometimes they're just plain wrong, but they're all educational for people who own a firearm, carry one, or keep one in their home. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. Advice might not apply to listeners in different jurisdictions. The incidents are as reported, except as is our policy, the names of the participants are omitted. My scheduled guest today was Don Green. He is one of our regular attorneys on here. He's tied up in a court case. So as we went to film this, he couldn't get here. So I am doing one of my rare Bob Irwin only telecasts. So if I don't stumble over too many things, we should be able to get through this fairly easily. This first story comes from WSOC TV9. It was reported on the 3rd of January, just a few days ago, from this broadcast anyway, a week ago. A local pharmacist at a drugstore was thinking he was going to get robbed, fired a warning shot at a possible robber. What happened here? The police said a man walked into the Starbright Pharmacy on Mount Holly, Hudsonville Road around 8:20 in the evening, wearing a mask and gloves. Channel 9 News spoke to the pharmacist, who said customers have to be buzzed into his store, a good security thing. The pharmacist said as the previous customer was leaving, the suspect opened the door before it closed completely. The pharmacist said the subject was wearing a mask and gloves and was moving pretty quickly. The pharmacist had been robbed in the past. He looked like he was coming to harm, and I felt threatened. That's a quote from the pharmacist. I would have to agree. That sounds pretty threatening. He added, I reached for my handgun, fired one warning shot in the air, and the guy kind of backed off a little bit. Then I ran out to see what was going on. He took his mask off. I made him get on the ground and called the police. The way the story is worded, it sounds like he followed the guy out and put him on the ground for the police, which is fine. The pharmacist detained the apparently unarmed man until officers showed up. The 22-year-old suspect was arrested and no one was injured. Typical case of somebody defending themselves with a gun. Channel 9 learned that the Starbright Pharmacy was previously robbed at gunpoint in 2016. The pharmacist bought the gun after that incident. The pharmacist, again quoted here, said, a guy came in a similar fashion, busted in, mask up, and put a gun to my head. Myself and another patient had to go in, open the safe, so it was a pretty traumatic experience. I'm quoting him as the police report quoted. In that robbery, the thief didn't take any money, just prescription drugs. The pharmacist, again, said, it just speaks to the volumes of what's going on in the whole opioid crisis, the pharmacist said. People are getting desperate, and it's really causing a lot of problems for people like myself. Pretty good use of a firearm here. The warning shot into the air can certainly be dangerous. Inside a building, perhaps not so much. In any case, it worked and no one was injured. Hopefully, given the pharmacist's history, local prosecutors can overlook this particular statutory crime. Most places it is illegal to fire a gun where it might exit the building. But he should be okay if we don't run into any other problems with this. We're going to take a short break here for a commercial, and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
My name is Jerry Creed and I'm a gun trust attorney. If you want to own an NFA firearm, a gun trust is a great way to own it because it allows multiple people to lawfully possess a firearm instead of just a single individual. I have reviewed lots of gun trusts and I have found they often don't include the forms you need to bring people on as trustees and remove them as trustees. In addition, a gun trust will save you the cost of probate and avoid probate, and it can protect your executor and family members. You know, there isn't an element of intent in these laws that affect the NFA firearm possession. So it doesn't matter if your wife didn't intend to sell the gun at a garage sale or yard sale, or your daughter didn't intend to drive the car with the silencer in the trunk. A gun trust is a great way to protect your family members and friends and share in the fun and pleasure of owning NFA weapons. If you want a gun trust done right, remember to trust Jerry.
Hi, I'm Bob Irwin, and I get to do my own commercial. The short version is I've had 50 years experience in firearms, firearm repair, firearm design, 30,000 CCW holders I've personally taught, 20,000 security officers, etc. Taught in 28 police academies, firearms and use force. I've also appeared more than 200 times in gun-related cases in federal, state, and local court. I wrote this book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense, because it answers virtually all the questions that I get every time I talk to people, answers questions that come in the emails. It will tell you what you need to know to keep yourself out of prison if you get involved in a self-defense shooting case, keep from losing your house in a civil lawsuit. There are lots of things I've learned over these years and watched people make a lot of mistakes. This book will save you a lot. If you purchase one, read through it, I'm sure you will find it enlightening. And it'll save me a lot of time on these shows trying to explain to people what they did wrong and what they shouldn't have done and so forth and so on. So you can buy it by sending me the funds at the address below, bob@firedupmail.com, or leave a message on my phone number there, which is 702-257-1060. I will return your calls and tell you where to mail the money and so forth and so on. They're available on my website also, which is attached to this regular show. Cost is $15. I said add for postage if you live outside the immediate 50 states, and I will get it to you first class mail. Thank you for listening. This book will save you a lot of hassle. Thank you. And we are back. This next story comes from KCRA-TV3. It's an NBC affiliate in Loomis, California. This took place, was reported on the 2nd of January, 8 days ago. The incident began about 8:45 in the evening. A male and female pair of shoplifters were spotted stealing from a Raley's store by a security officer. When they left, the officer confronted them in the parking lot, as they normally will, and say, put that stuff back and so forth. There was an altercation where the 25-year-old male suspect pulled out a knife. This was according to Lieutenant Andrew Scott with the Placer County Sheriff's Office there in California. The suspect then tried to stab this apparently unarmed security officer. The officer was able to wrestle the suspect to the ground, forcing the weapon out of his hand. The knife fell to the ground a few feet away from where the men were standing. The male subject told his 23-year-old female accomplice to stab the officer. She picked up the knife and began moving toward that officer. At that moment, an armed citizen, a CCW holder who happened to be nearby, pulled out his firearm and ordered the female to drop it. The female immediately complied, the sheriff's office said. Deputies then arrived at the scene and arrested both of the suspects. The male was booked on charges of robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and conspiracy. The female was booked on charges of robbery and conspiracy, said the sheriff's office. Commentary here. Pointing a firearm at someone attempting to stab a security officer, or pretty much anybody else, is certainly reasonable. Another incident where an armed citizen was able to prevent a serious injury to another human being. It happened to be in the right place at the right time. The police arrive later. The armed citizens tend to be there when the action takes place. This is a really interesting thing. As a note, what this whole thing was over, they had stolen a couple of bottles of champagne and a videotape, a video disc. I'm showing my age, a video disc. The whole value of what they were taking was $50. And for that, they're willing to stab a security officer. You wonder what's going on in the world. They're highbrow enough to steal champagne and dumb enough to try and stab somebody over $50. I did find one other really interesting story this week that I really tend not to do single source stories, but I was able to get no follow-up on this at all, and I'm kind of quoting what this publication put verbatim. They're called the Hickory Daily Record. They're in Newton, South Carolina. And this dates from just December of 2018, which is 3 or 4 weeks ago. A local 47-year-old resident actually accidentally shot himself to death. Apparently awakening to the sound of a ringing telephone next to the bed, he reached for the phone, but instead grabbed a Smith & Wesson .38 revolver, which discharged when he drew it up to his ear. Are you getting the picture of this? Thinking he's talking on the phone? This is a really unusual event. Investigators looked very hard into this and apparently ruled out suicide or a murder from the physical evidence at the scene. There's obviously going to be a lot of trace blood spatter and this and that and so forth, so they were reasonably sure what happened was not an intruder murdering this guy or anything. What we can learn from this, and we've kind of hit the edge of it in a few shows, keeping a gun at ready in your home is a good idea, especially in high crime areas. But most instructors and myself always advocate it should be far enough away to be sure you're awake when you actually grab the gun. This is always part of safe storage. The Anti-Gun Crown lives on the rare stories about home accidents. This type of thing is really not what we would prefer to have happen. The left will run with it, but who knows? It's really unfortunate. I've investigated a number of home shootings, and the one common thing that would save all of these accidents is screaming a warning at the intruder. If there isn't one, as in this case, this is really unusual, but that prevents you from shooting somebody who lives in the house, who's coming home late, the drunk who's wandered into your house by accident. that sort of thing, which are unfortunately more common than we'd care to admit. Warnings work. That's why I advocate them. Obviously, not every instance has time for a warning, but if you have time, use them. We are out of our time now. I want to do a little bit of closing here. You can check out our recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains recent shows. Older shows are being added. We're working on that because we've gone to high def. You can tell because you can see all the wrinkles. It takes a little bit of work to get those to work out, but we're doing it. It's the commercials that keep us on the air, so please patronize our sponsors. Capitalism wins every time. We'll be back next Thursday on our website and at YouTube at the American Guns and the American Guns and Glory Network. I want to repeat that while you're watching any media, please hit subscribe, and the new shows will be sent to your computer or phone automatically. This runs on a lot of media that we don't know about, but please share these broadcasts with your friends, and we will be back next week. Thanks for listening. Have a good weekend.